Everyone thought Nathan Brooks was the man about to lose everything. His wife had the charm, the friends, the social influence, and a story convincing enough to make him look like the villain. For nearly a year, Evelyn Carter had planned every detail of her escape: the affair, the lies, the divorce, even the sympathy. She believed she had accounted for every risk, every witness, every secret. What she didn't realize was that while she was planning the perfect betrayal, her husband was quietly collecting the truth, and the one mistake she overlooked would destroy everything she had built. The rain had always made Seattle look honest. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of their modern townhouse overlooking Lake Union, the city lights shimmered through the drizzle like confessions waiting to be spoken. Nathan Brooks stood in the kitchen holding 2 glasses of wine, one for himself, one for his wife. The second glass remained untouched. Again, he glanced at the clock. 9:47 in the evening. Evelyn had texted almost an hour earlier. Running late. Marketing team dinner. Don't wait up. A simple message. Perfectly reasonable. The kind of message no husband should question. Yet something about it lingered. Nathan set the wine down and looked toward the framed photographs lining the hallway. Vacation pictures. Holiday parties. Anniversary dinners. 12 years condensed into carefully selected moments. Every photograph showed the same thing. Evelyn smiling. Nathan smiling. A marriage that appeared effortless. People envied them. Friends often joked that they were one of the few couples who had survived their 30s without becoming strangers. Nathan sometimes laughed at those comments. Other times he wondered whether people only saw what they wanted to see. The front door finally opened at 10:12. Evelyn stepped inside carrying the scent of expensive perfume and damp air. She looked stunning. She always did. Long blonde hair slightly tousled from the weather. Camel-colored coat. Designer handbag. The confident elegance that seemed to draw attention wherever she went. There you are, Nathan said. She smiled. Tough night. The smile reached her lips, not her eyes. Nathan noticed. Lately he noticed everything. How was dinner? She removed her coat. Boring. That bad? 3 hours listening to executives talk about branding strategies. Nathan chuckled. Sounds painful. It was. She kissed his cheek. A brief touch. Mechanical. Then she walked toward the bedroom. Nathan remained where he was. Years of marriage taught people to recognize patterns. And lately, Evelyn felt like someone learning a new script. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just small changes. Tiny absences. Subtle shifts. The kind most people ignored. Nathan wasn't most people. His career depended on details. As a cybersecurity consultant, he spent his days identifying threats hidden beneath ordinary behavior, patterns, anomalies, tiny inconsistencies, the things others overlooked. He found himself applying those same instincts at home, not intentionally, simply because he couldn't turn them off. Later that night, Evelyn fell asleep quickly. Nathan lay beside her staring at the ceiling. Her phone rested on the nightstand, face down, a habit she never used to have. The room remained silent, except for the soft rhythm of rain against glass. Then her phone vibrated. Once. A message. Nathan turned his head. The screen illuminated briefly. Just enough for a preview notification to appear. A single name. Lucas. Nothing else. The screen went dark. Nathan stared into the darkness. His heartbeat remained steady. No anger. No panic. No conclusions. Just observation. Lucas. He searched his memory. The name sounded familiar. Someone from her company, perhaps. A client. A colleague. Could mean nothing. Most likely meant nothing. Yet, for reasons he couldn't explain, he didn't fall asleep for a very long time. The following weeks unfolded normally. Or at least they appeared normal. Evelyn continued posting cheerful photographs online. Coffee dates. Business events. Weekend outings. Hundreds of likes. Dozens of comments. A carefully maintained portrait of happiness. Nathan watched quietly. The distance between them continued growing. She spent more time on her phone, less time talking, more evenings away, more unexplained schedule changes. Whenever he asked questions, her answers arrived quickly, too quickly, ready-made, polished, as if she had anticipated them. One Saturday afternoon, they attended a birthday party hosted by mutual friends. The house buzzed with laughter and music. People gathered around the backyard fire pit despite the chilly weather. Nathan stood beside the grill, speaking with several guests when he noticed Evelyn across the yard. She was laughing, not unusual. Evelyn laughed often. But this laugh was different, unfiltered, alive. The kind of laughter he hadn't heard from her in months. The man standing beside her smiled back. Tall, dark-haired, expensive suit despite the casual gathering. Nathan watched as the man leaned closer. Evelyn touched his arm, briefly, naturally, comfortably, like people accustomed to each other's presence. A familiar sensation settled in Nathan's chest. Not jealousy, recognition. The recognition that something important had changed before he even understood what it was. A few minutes later, Evelyn returned carrying drinks. Who's that? Nathan asked casually. She followed his gaze. For a fraction of a second, her expression shifted. Then it disappeared. Lucas. There was that name again. From work? Yeah. She took a sip. Our new marketing director. Nathan nodded. He seems nice. He is? Her answer arrived too fast. Too defensive for such an ordinary question, Nathan noticed. Again. The rest of the evening passed without incident. But on the drive home, silence filled the car. Streetlights flashed across the windshield. Evelyn scrolled through her phone. Nathan focused on the road. Finally, he spoke. Do you ever feel like we're drifting apart? The question seemed to catch her off guard. She lowered her phone. What? We've both been busy. Everyone's busy. That's not what I asked. Evelyn seethed. Nathan, where is this coming from? I don't know. It wasn't entirely true. He knew exactly where it was coming from. The late nights. The distance. The unfamiliar laughter. The name appearing after midnight. But he wasn't ready to say that. Not yet. You worry too much, she said softly. Then she smiled. The same smile she used when calming nervous clients or persuading difficult coworkers. Reassuring. Carefully controlled. Nothing's wrong. Nathan looked at her. For a long moment neither spoke. Then he returned his attention to the road. Outside, rain continued falling over the city. Inside the car, something invisible settled between them. A silence neither knew how to cross. Or perhaps only one of them still wanted to. And somewhere beyond Nathan's view, the first pieces of Evelyn's carefully constructed betrayal were already moving into place. What neither of them realized was that the game had already begun. One was building a lie. The other was beginning to notice the cracks. The first real crack appeared on a Tuesday night. Not because Nathan found evidence. Not because he caught Evelyn in a lie. But because for the first time in 12 years, he realized he no longer knew what she was thinking. The realization arrived quietly. The way most devastating truths do. They were sitting across from each other at the dining table, eating takeout from a Thai restaurant they had loved since their 20s. The television played softly in the background. Rain tapped against the windows. Everything looked normal, yet nothing felt normal. Evelyn barely looked up from her phone. Her thumbs moved constantly. Message after message, tiny smiles appearing and disappearing on her face. Nathan noticed every one of them. Busy conversation? He asked casually. She glanced up. Work. At 9:30? She shrugged. Marketing never sleeps. Nathan nodded. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. A few seconds later her phone vibrated again. The screen lit up. She turned it over immediately. The movement was so quick it almost looked rehearsed. Almost. Nathan continued eating. But something cold settled deeper inside him. Years ago Evelyn had left her phone everywhere. Kitchen counters. Bathroom sinks. The couch. Sometimes she forgot where she had placed it. Now it never left her hand. Never remained visible. Never stayed unlocked around him. The change wasn't dramatic. It was simply impossible to ignore once he noticed it. That night he woke shortly after 2 in the morning. The other side of the bed was empty. The bathroom light was off. The hallway was dark. Nathan sat up. A faint glow came from downstairs. He walked quietly toward it. Halfway down the staircase, he stopped. Evelyn was sitting alone in the living room, smiling at her phone. Not the polite smile she showed coworkers. Not the practiced smile she used during social events. This smile was intimate, private. The smile of someone emotionally invested in the person on the other side of a conversation. Nathan stood frozen. Then the phone chimed. Evelyn laughed softly. A laugh meant for one person. A laugh she hadn't given her husband in months. Nathan took another step. The floor creaked. Evelyn jumped. Her head snapped upward. Shock flashed across her face before disappearing almost instantly. "What are you doing up?" she asked. Nathan remained calm. "Couldn't sleep." She locked the screen immediately. "I was answering emails." At 2 in the morning. Nathan didn't say it aloud. Instead, he walked into the room. "Everything okay?" "Of course." The answer arrived too quickly. Again. Always too quickly. He sat on the opposite end of the couch. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she stood. "I'm exhausted." The conversation ended before it truly began. Nathan watched her disappear upstairs. His instincts screamed that something wasn't right, but instincts weren't proof. And proof mattered. The following weekend introduced another inconsistency. Evelyn claimed she had a mandatory company workshop on Saturday, an all-day event, important enough that attendance was required. Nathan accepted the explanation, at least outwardly. Around noon he met an old friend for lunch downtown. As they walked through a crowded shopping district near Pike Place Market, Nathan froze. Across the street stood Evelyn. There was no workshop, no conference center, no co-workers. Just Evelyn. And Lucas. The two of them emerged from a restaurant together. Laughing. Comfortable. Close. Far too close. Nathan remained hidden among pedestrians. His heart pounded. Yet he couldn't look away. Lucas opened the passenger door of his car. Evelyn touched his shoulder. Then she leaned closer and whispered something. Lucas laughed. A moment later they drove away. Nathan stood motionless. His friend continued talking for several seconds before noticing. "Nathan? What? You okay?" Nathan forced a smile. "Yeah." But he wasn't. Not even close. For the first time, suspicion became something heavier. Something with weight. Still, he didn't confront her. Not yet. He wanted certainty. That evening Evelyn returned home around 6. She looked relaxed. Happy. Nathan watched her unpack groceries she claimed to have purchased after the workshop. The lie came effortlessly. No hesitation. No visible guilt. "Long day?" Nathan asked. "The longest." She rolled her eyes dramatically. 8 hours of presentations. Nathan studied her face. Nothing. No nervousness. No fear. Only confidence. A strange thought crossed his mind. Maybe the affair wasn't the most disturbing part. Maybe the most disturbing part was how easily she lied. The next few weeks became a series of tiny fractures. Individually meaningless. Together impossible to ignore. More late nights. More business dinners. More unexplained schedule changes. And every time Nathan raised a concern, Evelyn somehow turned the conversation around. One evening, he finally decided to push slightly harder. "You're spending a lot of time with Lucas." The room became still. Evelyn looked up from her laptop. "What does that mean?" "Nothing." "Clearly, it means something." Nathan remained calm. "You mention him constantly. Because we work together." "I know. So what's the issue?" "There isn't one." Evelyn closed her laptop. The expression on her face changed. Not fear. Offense. A carefully calculated offense. "Nathan, are you seriously suggesting something inappropriate is happening?" "I'm asking a question." "No." She shook her head. "You're accusing me." "I'm not." "You are." Her voice sharpened. And suddenly Nathan found himself defending a position he hadn't intended to take. The shift happened so fast it felt disorienting. "You've been distant," he said. "So now I'm distant?" "Evelyn." "No, let's talk about it." She stood. "You've been working ridiculous hours for years. What does that have to do with anything? You miss anniversaries." "I missed one anniversary dinner. You emotionally checked out long before I did." Nathan stared at her. The words struck harder than he expected. Because part of him wondered if she was right. Had he become too focused on work? Had he taken their marriage for granted? Had he missed warning signs because he assumed she would always be there? Evelyn saw the hesitation. And pressed harder. "Maybe instead of interrogating me, you should ask why you're suddenly insecure." The conversation ended exactly where she wanted it to, with Nathan questioning himself. Later that night he sat alone in his office. The city glowed outside the windows. His laptop remained untouched. His thoughts drifted endlessly. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe stress had distorted his judgment. Maybe every marriage went through difficult seasons. Maybe Evelyn was telling the truth. The possibilities exhausted him. Then his phone buzzed. A notification from social media. Someone had tagged Evelyn in a photo. Nathan opened it. A corporate networking event from earlier that week. Dozens of professionals smiling for the camera. He scanned the image. Then stopped. Lucas stood beside Evelyn. Nothing unusual, except his hand, resting against the small of her back. A subtle gesture. One most people wouldn't notice. One impossible for Nathan to ignore. He zoomed in. Their expressions. Their posture. The ease between them. The intimacy. Not proof. But not innocent either. Nathan stared at the screen for a long time. The doubts he had spent weeks fighting began to fade. Replacing them was something colder. Something clearer. For weeks, Evelyn had convinced him to question himself. His memory. His instincts. His judgment. But deep down, Nathan understood a simple truth. People rarely become defensive over things that don't matter. And Evelyn had become defensive every single time Lucas entered the conversation. Across the house, he heard her laughter drifting from the bedroom as she watched videos on her phone, or perhaps exchanged messages. Nathan couldn't know, not yet. But for the first time, he stopped asking himself whether something was wrong. Instead, he began asking a different question. How much had she already hidden? And somewhere in another part of the city, Lucas Reed was unknowingly becoming the center of a storm that had only just begun. The moment Nathan stopped looking for reassurance, he started finding answers. Not immediately. Not dramatically. The truth did not arrive as a single discovery. It arrived as fragments, tiny pieces scattered across ordinary days. Receipts. Timestamps. Inconsistencies. Digital footprints. The kinds of details most people ignored. The kinds of details Nathan had built his career around. 3 days after the argument about Lucas, Nathan purchased a small black notebook. Nothing sophisticated. No secret software. No elaborate surveillance equipment. Just a notebook. Because memories could be questioned. Facts could not. The first entry was simple. Tuesday, 9:42 p.m., Evelyn claims team dinner. Phone message from Lucas at 9:58 p.m. The second entry followed 2 days later. Thursday, business meeting until 8 p.m. Company social media shows event ended at 5:12 p.m. Then another, and another. Weeks passed. The notebook slowly filled. Nathan never mentioned it, never confronted her, never changed his behavior. If anything, he became calmer, more attentive, more patient. Evelyn interpreted his silence as acceptance. She had no idea it was observation. One Friday evening she announced another last-minute business dinner. The explanation sounded polished. Too polished. I'll probably be home around 11. Nathan nodded. No problem. She smiled. Relieved. That smile bothered him more than the lie. Because it suggested she expected resistance. Expected questions. Expected suspicion. And was pleased not to receive any. At 8:17 p.m., Nathan opened his laptop. A coincidence had begun troubling him. Every work dinner seemed to happen on nights when Lucas was unavailable on company communication platforms. Not proof. Just a pattern. But patterns mattered. An hour later, another clue appeared. Evelyn posted a photograph to Instagram. A carefully framed image of wine glasses and upscale restaurant decor. Caption: Long night with the team. Dozens of likes appeared within minutes. Comments followed. Beautiful. Hard-working as always. Corporate queen. Nathan stared at the image, then zoomed in. A reflection hidden inside the window glass. Faint. Barely visible. Most people would never notice. Nathan did. There were only 2 place settings at the table. Not 6. Not 8. Not a team dinner. 2. His chest tightened. For several seconds he simply sat there. Not angry. Not yet. Just exhausted. The lie had become undeniable. Still, he wanted certainty. He wanted the entire truth. Not assumptions. Not interpretations. The truth. Because if 12 years of marriage were about to end, he refused to build that decision on guesses. The next breakthrough came unexpectedly. One rainy afternoon Evelyn left her tablet on the kitchen counter before rushing to work. A mistake. A small one. Nathan almost ignored it. Then he noticed a notification banner briefly appear. A cloud storage synchronization alert. The screen locked before he could read the details. Normally he would have walked away. Instead, something stopped him. For months Evelyn had been hiding pieces of her life. For months she had manipulated conversations and denied concerns. The marriage already existed inside a space where honesty was missing. Nathan no longer felt obligated to protect secrets she was using against him. That evening, after she returned home, he waited, patiently, carefully. A few days later, another opportunity emerged. This time Evelyn left her tablet charging in the bedroom while taking a shower. A notification appeared again. Brief. Almost invisible. But enough. Nathan memorized the cloud service name. Hours later, sitting alone in his office, he began researching. Not hacking. Not breaking into accounts. Simply following available information. Looking for connections. Looking for mistakes. And eventually he found one. People rarely realize how much of their lives exist online. Shared devices. Automatic backups. Old account recoveries. Forgotten folders. Synchronization settings. Nathan understood digital ecosystems better than most. And Evelyn, despite her intelligence, had overlooked something important. Months earlier, she had linked a shared household backup service to one of their devices. A harmless convenience. At least it had seemed harmless at the time. Now it became something else. A doorway. What Nathan discovered there changed everything. The first folder contained photographs. Nothing explicit. Nothing scandalous. Yet devastating nonetheless. Pictures Evelyn had never shared with him. Weekend brunches. Hotel lounges. Private dinners. Selfies. Dozens of them. Every image included Lucas. Some looked innocent. Others did not. The timestamps stretched back nearly 10 months. 10 months. Nathan stared at the screen. Almost a year. Nearly a year of deception. Nearly a year of lies told across dinner tables and anniversary celebrations. He felt physically ill. But worse discoveries waited. Another folder contained deleted screenshots. Messages. Fragments of conversations. Many were incomplete. Some had been partially erased. Others survived intact. Nathan opened the first. His hands trembled. Lucas, does he suspect anything? Evelyn, not a chance. Nathan froze. His eyes remained fixed on the words. He read them again. And again? Not a chance. 12 years together. Reduced to 4 words. Another screenshot. Lucas, when are you finally leaving? Evelyn, soon. Everything has to be done carefully. Carefully. The word lingered. Nathan suddenly understood something important. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't emotional confusion. This wasn't a woman making terrible decisions while trapped in complicated feelings. This was planning. Deliberate. Methodical. Calculated. The realization hurt more than the affair itself. Because affairs sometimes happened inside moments of weakness. Planning required intention. Planning required choice. Planning required repetition. Nathan continued reading. Each message revealed another layer. Another lie. Another secret. Another piece of the woman he no longer recognized. Near midnight, he finally pushed away from his desk. The city lights blurred beyond the windows. His office felt smaller. The air heavier. He closed his eyes. Memories flooded back. Their wedding. Their first apartment. The night they stayed awake naming future children they never ended up having. The vacations. The promises. The ordinary moments that once felt permanent. Had any of it been real? Or had reality changed somewhere along the way while he remained blind? The next morning Evelyn entered the kitchen carrying coffee. She looked radiant. Happy. Relaxed. The woman in the photographs. The woman in the messages. The woman planning a future with another man. All hidden behind the familiar face of his wife. Good morning, she said. Nathan looked up from his newspaper. Morning. She kissed his cheek. The gesture felt foreign. Almost surreal. For the first time, he understood what betrayal truly felt like. It wasn't rage. Not initially. It was disorientation. The unbearable realization that the person standing in front of you was simultaneously someone you knew and someone you didn't. Someone real. Someone fictional. Someone familiar. Someone completely unknown. Everything okay? Evelyn asked. Nathan forced a smile. Fine. She studied him briefly. Then relaxed. The lie worked. Again. As she left for work, Nathan remained seated at the table. His coffee had gone cold. The evidence already filled dozens of pages. Photographs. Messages. Timelines. Patterns. Yet something continued bothering him. The affair was terrible. But instinct told him there was more. Much more. The messages hinted at preparations. References to timing. References to plans. references to future steps neither of them fully discussed in writing. Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that he was only seeing the surface, the visible layer, the betrayal beneath the betrayal. And somewhere hidden among months of secrets, a much darker truth was waiting to be uncovered. A truth that would eventually reveal that Lucas Reed was not the greatest threat to Nathan's marriage. Evelyn's real plan was. Nathan had spent most of his career studying how people concealed the truth. Corporate fraud, data breaches, internal espionage. The technology changed every year. Human behavior never did. People who lived double lives eventually created patterns. Not because they were careless. Because maintaining two realities at the same time required constant effort. And eventually, effort left fingerprints. By early spring, Nathan had stopped searching for evidence of an affair. That question had already been answered. What he was searching for now was motive, purpose, the end game. Because the messages between Evelyn and Lucas suggested something larger than romance. There was strategy involved, planning, preparation. The affair wasn't merely happening, it was moving somewhere. And Nathan needed to know where. The answer began revealing itself through fragments. One evening Evelyn sat across from him on the couch while scrolling through social media. Nathan pretended to watch television. In reality, he was observing. Lately, Evelyn had become obsessed with public perception. Every photograph was carefully selected, every post meticulously curated, every caption designed to tell a story. Not about happiness. About sacrifice. Subtle sacrifice. The difference mattered. Nathan noticed the pattern immediately. A picture of her working late at the office. Caption: sometimes success comes with lonely sacrifices. Another post. A dinner table set for one. Not every evening goes according to plan. A week later. Learning to prioritize myself after years of putting everyone else first. The comments flooded in. Stay strong. You deserve happiness. Take care of yourself. Nathan stared at the screen. Most people would never notice what she was doing. But he did. Because each post carried the same hidden message. Not directly. Indirectly. A narrative. The story of a neglected wife. The story of a woman trapped in an emotionally unfulfilling marriage. The story of someone preparing an audience before revealing the final act. For the first time, Nathan felt genuine fear. Not for himself. For the truth. Because lies repeated often enough eventually became reality in the minds of others. A few days later, another piece fell into place. Nathan attended a cybersecurity conference downtown. During a lunch break, he unexpectedly ran into Claire Whitmore, one of Evelyn's closest friends. After exchanging greetings, they sat together for coffee. The conversation drifted naturally toward marriage. Then Claire smiled sympathetically. A strange smile. One Nathan immediately noticed. How are things with Evelyn? Nathan paused. Good. Why? Claire looked surprised. Oh. Nathan felt something tighten inside his chest. What? Claire hesitated. Nothing. Claire. She looked uncomfortable. I probably shouldn't say anything. The silence stretched. Finally, she sighed. Evelyn mentioned you've both been struggling. Nathan kept his expression neutral. Struggling how? Claire stirred her coffee. Just. Growing apart. Nathan said nothing. Claire continued. She said you've become distant over the years. Another pause. Emotionally unavailable. There it was. The phrase. Nathan had heard it before. Not from Evelyn directly. But in her social media posts. In her comments. In her carefully crafted victim narrative. Emotionally unavailable. The words followed a script. And suddenly Nathan understood something terrifying. She wasn't only telling stories online. She was telling them privately. To friends. To family. To anyone who might eventually become a witness. A jury. An audience. Claire kept talking. Honestly, I felt bad for her. Nathan forced a smile. I'm sure you did. When they parted ways 30 minutes later, Nathan sat alone in the hotel lobby, his coffee untouched, his thoughts racing. The affair was no longer the central issue. The real problem was reputation. Evelyn wasn't simply preparing to leave. She was preparing to win. And in her version of events, Nathan would become the villain. That night he opened the evidence folder again. Hours passed. Photographs. Messages. Timelines. Then something caught his attention. A screenshot he had overlooked weeks earlier. At first glance it seemed insignificant. A conversation between Evelyn and Lucas. Then Nathan read it more carefully. Lucas, people already believe you're unhappy. Evelyn, good. A second message followed. Lucas. And him? Evelyn, by the time this is over, they'll think he pushed me away years ago. Nathan's blood ran cold. He read the exchange repeatedly. Not because he doubted what it meant. Because he couldn't believe it. The affair had never been enough. Evelyn wasn't planning an escape. She was planning a narrative, a storyline, a public trial. And she intended to write every role herself, including Nathan's. For several minutes he simply stared into space. The woman he married had become a stranger. Not because she fell in love with someone else. People made mistakes. People failed. People betrayed. The true horror was something else. She was actively rewriting history. 12 years of marriage. 12 years of sacrifices. 12 years of loyalty. All being transformed into evidence against him. The realization hurt more than discovering Lucas. Far more. Because affairs attack trust. This attacked identity. Weeks passed. Evelyn's double life intensified. So did her confidence. She spent more nights away, more weekends unavailable, more unexplained meetings. The secrecy no longer seemed stressful to her. It energized her. Lucas had become more than a lover. He had become her imagined future. The man waiting beyond the marriage. The reward at the end of the deception. One Saturday evening, Nathan witnessed another piece of that future. Through the shared backup service, dozens of new photographs appeared. A luxury hotel. A rooftop bar. A weekend getaway. Evelyn and Lucas together, arms wrapped around each other, smiling freely. No caution. No guilt. Just certainty. One image struck Nathan particularly hard. Evelyn wore the necklace he had given her on their 10th anniversary. The same necklace she claimed had been misplaced months ago. Nathan closed the photograph. For the first time, anger surfaced. Not explosive anger. Controlled anger. The dangerous kind. The kind that remained silent. The kind that waited. Across the following weeks, he continued gathering evidence. Not because he wanted revenge. Not yet. Because he understood something crucial. If Evelyn succeeded in controlling the narrative, evidence would become the only defense against lies. And the lies were growing. Friends began behaving differently. Subtle changes. Sympathetic expressions. Careful questions. Concern disguised as curiosity. The campaign was working. People already viewed Evelyn as the suffering wife. Nathan as the absent husband. Exactly as she intended. One evening, while preparing dinner, Evelyn casually mentioned divorce for the first time. Not directly. Indirectly. The way someone tests water before stepping in. Do you think some couples stay together too long? Nathan continued chopping vegetables. Depends. On what? Whether they're trying to fix the marriage. She looked at him carefully. And if they're not? Nathan met her haza. Then they're usually already gone. For a brief moment something flickered behind Evelyn's eyes. Not guilt. Not sadness. Calculation. As if she were evaluating a timeline. A schedule. A plan. Then she smiled. The conversation ended. But Nathan knew. The countdown had begun. Whatever she was preparing was approaching. Fast. And somewhere hidden inside the thousands of files he had already collected, one final piece remained undiscovered. A piece so devastating that even Evelyn herself didn't realize it still existed. A piece that would eventually destroy the carefully crafted story she had spent nearly a year creating. Because while Evelyn believed she was building the perfect version of events, she had overlooked one fatal truth. Digital footprints rarely disappear forever. And the most dangerous evidence is often the evidence people forget exists. Nathan found the fatal mistake on a Sunday morning. Not because he was searching for it. Not because he expected it. But because the most dangerous secrets are often hidden inside the places people stop checking. The discovery began with a routine review of files. For weeks, Nathan had built a private archive. Screenshots. Photographs. Messages. Receipts. Timelines. Everything organized with the same methodical precision he used throughout his professional career. He wasn't preparing for revenge. He was preparing for reality. Because when the moment arrived, he intended to know the truth better than anyone else, including Evelyn. The rain fell steadily outside his office window as he worked through another folder from the shared backup system. Most of the contents were familiar. Vacation photos. Temporary downloads. Old work presentations. Nothing important. Then he noticed something unusual. A file name. Simple. Forgettable. Almost invisible. Future planning. Doc X. Nathan nearly skipped it. The title sounded harmless. Corporate. Generic. Probably work-related. Yet something about the timestamp caught his attention. The document had been created nearly 11 months earlier, long before most of the evidence of the affair appeared, long before Lucas became visible in the photographs, long before the marriage had begun visibly deteriorating. Nathan opened it. For several seconds he simply stared at the screen. Then the blood drained from his face. The document wasn't a work project. It was Evelyn's blueprint, her entire plan. Months of preparation laid out in black and white. Every page felt like a knife. At the top was a simple heading: Transition Strategy. The words sounded clinical, professional, almost innocent. The contents were anything but. Nathan continued reading. The first section outlined financial preparations, separate accounts, asset reviews, retirement projections, consultations with attorneys. The planning stretched back nearly a year. Nearly a year. Nathan's hands tightened around the edge of his desk. The affair hadn't destroyed the marriage. The decision to destroy the marriage had come first. The affair had simply followed. That realization changed everything. Every memory suddenly looked different. Every anniversary dinner, every vacation, every kiss. She had already been planning her exit. The love story had been dying while Nathan still believed it was alive. He kept reading. The next section hit even harder. Narrative preparation. Nathan froze. The phrase sounded familiar, because he had already seen evidence of it. Social media, friends, family, the victim story. But this was different. This was the strategy behind it. A written strategy. Deliberate. Calculated. Page after page detailed how Evelyn intended to shape public perception before announcing the divorce. Some entries were bullet points. Others were full paragraphs. Each one felt more disturbing than the last. Increase visibility of independent activities. Subtly reference emotional loneliness. Avoid public arguments to maintain credibility. Position separation as a long-term consequence rather than a sudden decision. Nathan stared at the screen, his stomach twisted. This wasn't emotional confusion. This wasn't heartbreak. This wasn't a woman trapped in a failing marriage. This was campaign management, public relations, image control. The same skills Evelyn used professionally were now being used against her husband. Then came the section that made Nathan physically stand from his chair. Likely supporters. A list. Names. Dozens of names. Friends. Co-workers. Family members. People categorized according to influence and loyalty. Beside each name were notes. Nathan read them slowly. Claire Whitmore. Already sympathetic. Continue conversations regarding emotional neglect. Michael Sanders. Likely neutral. Focus on work-life imbalance narrative. Nathan's sister, Rebecca, needs gradual exposure to relationship difficulties. He closed his eyes. For a moment he couldn't breathe. The cruelty wasn't in the affair. It was in the manipulation. The systematic manipulation of everyone around them. People who cared about them. People who trusted them. People being unknowingly recruited into a lie. Nathan sat back down. The document continued, and somehow it became worse. Near the middle of the file appeared references to Lucas. Not romantic references. Strategic ones. Relationship with Lucas must remain private until divorce finalized. Avoid overlap timeline concerns. Public introduction after separation period established. Nathan reread the sentence. Then again. And again. There it was. Proof. Not simply of infidelity, but of intent. Months of intent. The affair hadn't happened accidentally. It had been integrated into the plan. Carefully managed. Carefully timed. Carefully hidden. Nathan suddenly understood why every confrontation had felt strange. Why every denial sounded rehearsed. Why every argument seemed redirected. Evelyn wasn't improvising. She was following a script she had written herself. Hours passed. The rain outside intensified. Nathan continued reading. The final section nearly shattered whatever remained of his illusions. The heading read, Potential Divorce Advantages. He already knew he wouldn't like what came next. He wasn't prepared for how much it would hurt. The notes discussed negotiation strategies, asset positioning, social leverage, public perception, legal optics. Then he saw a sentence that would haunt him forever. If necessary, emphasized Nathan's emotional absence as primary cause. Most people already believe this. Nathan stared at the words. Most people already believe this. Not might believe. Already believe. Meaning the campaign had worked. Months of conversations. Months of carefully planted suggestions. Months of narrative shaping. And the worst part? People genuinely thought they were helping her. By late afternoon, Nathan finally closed the document. Silence filled the room. The house felt unfamiliar. Almost hostile. Downstairs he heard Evelyn laughing while speaking on the phone. Probably Lucas. Maybe someone else. It no longer mattered, because Nathan now understood the full scope of what he was facing. This was not an affair. An affair was a symptom. The real betrayal was premeditated deception. The real betrayal was rewriting reality. The real betrayal was turning trust into a weapon. Later that evening, Evelyn entered his office. She carried a glass of wine. Her expression relaxed. Comfortable. Confident. A woman convinced she controlled every variable. You've been working all day. Nathan looked up. Busy day. She smiled. You always say that. The irony almost made him laugh. For a brief moment he wondered whether she remembered creating the document. Whether she believed it had been deleted. Whether she had forgotten it entirely. One forgotten file. One careless oversight. That was all it took. The perfect betrayal had developed a crack. And neither Evelyn nor Lucas had any idea it existed. Everything okay? She asked. Nathan studied her face. The familiar face. The stranger's face. The face that had shared 12 years of his life. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm fine. She smiled. Satisfied. Then she left the room. Nathan listened to her footsteps disappear down the hallway. The silence that followed felt different. Not because he was less hurt. He wasn't. Not because he had stopped grieving. He hadn't. The difference was certainty. For months he had been chasing answers. Now, he finally had them. And with certainty came something new. A plan. Because while Evelyn had spent nearly a year preparing her escape, she had made one catastrophic mistake. She had written everything down. And now Nathan possessed proof powerful enough to destroy every lie she intended to tell. The only question remaining was when. And more importantly, how. Because the moment he revealed the truth would determine who controlled the ending of this story. And Nathan Brooks had no intention of losing control ever again. The most difficult part wasn't gathering evidence. It wasn't reading the messages. It wasn't discovering the affair. The hardest part was pretending. Every morning, Nathan woke beside the woman who had spent nearly a year planning his destruction. Every evening, he sat across from her at dinner while she discussed work, weekend plans, and mutual friends as though their marriage still existed. And every day, he acted like he knew nothing. The performance required discipline. One mistake could ruin everything. One emotional outburst. One careless accusation. One confrontation too early. If Evelyn realized what he knew, she would adapt. Delete evidence. Change strategies. Control the narrative even more aggressively. Nathan couldn't allow that, so he played the roles she expected. The distracted husband. The trusting husband. The husband she believed was already defeated. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, he prepared. Carefully. Methodically. Patiently. The same way Evelyn had. Only Nathan wasn't building a lie. He was preserving the truth. Spring gradually gave way to summer. Seattle's gray skies brightened. Social events multiplied. Charity functions. Corporate networking dinners. Weekend gatherings among friends. The kind of events where reputations were built and destroyed. Nathan noticed the pattern. Evelyn had become unusually active in their social circle, far more active than before. She attended every event, hosted dinners, organized brunches, reconnected with old friends, strengthened relationships. At first glance, it looked harmless. But Nathan understood exactly what she was doing. She was investing in witnesses, building support, expanding the audience that would eventually hear her version of the story. The more he watched, the more obvious it became. One evening they attended a rooftop cocktail party overlooking Elliott Bay. The sunset painted the water in gold and crimson. Laughter drifted between groups of well-dressed professionals. Nathan stood beside the railing holding a glass of bourbon. A few feet away, Evelyn spoke with several women. Her voice carried lightly through the evening air. I tried for a long time. Nathan heard her say it. Just loud enough. Not too loud. Never too loud. I guess sometimes people grow apart. Sympathetic nods followed. Concerned expressions. The reaction she wanted. The reaction she had spent months cultivating. Nathan remained silent, watching, listening, collecting. The campaign was nearing completion. A week later, another opportunity appeared. Nathan was invited to lunch by Michael Sanders, a mutual friend. Halfway through the meal, Michael hesitated before speaking. You okay? Nathan looked up. Why? Michael shrugged. I don't know. A pause. Things seemed difficult at home. Nathan almost smiled. The script was spreading, exactly as Evelyn intended. Did Evelyn say that? Michael looked uncomfortable. Not directly. Of course not. Evelyn was smarter than that. Direct accusations created suspicion. Subtle suggestions created belief. Nathan stirred his coffee. Marriage has challenges. Michael nodded sympathetically. The conversation moved on. But Nathan left the restaurant understanding something important. The narrative had already reached nearly everyone. Friends, co-workers, family. The foundation was complete, which meant Evelyn would soon make her move. And Nathan needed to be ready first. That night, he began organizing everything. The evidence had grown enormous. Photographs, messages, financial records, travel receipts, social media timelines, deleted screenshots, the planning document, thousands of pages of digital proof. Too much information could become noise. Nathan needed clarity. He needed precision. He needed a story stronger than Evelyn's. Fortunately, the truth usually required fewer explanations than lies. Over several weeks he built a comprehensive timeline. Every lie, every meeting, every contradiction, every manipulation, every deliberate step. The result was devastating, because when arranged chronologically, the evidence revealed something impossible to dispute. Evelyn's victim narrative had begun before the marriage visibly deteriorated, before any serious conflict, before any separation discussions, before most people would have suspected trouble. The timeline exposed intent, planning, premeditation, and intent changed everything. One Saturday afternoon, Nathan received another unexpected gift. Evelyn made a mistake. A small one. The kind confident people often make. She left her laptop open while taking a phone call outside. Nathan wasn't looking for new evidence. He already had enough. But a notification appeared. A calendar reminder. The title immediately caught his attention. Gala Preparation Meeting. The event date was 6 weeks away. Nathan recognized it instantly. The annual Seattle Children's Foundation Charity Gala, one of the city's most prestigious social events. Hundreds of guests attended every year. Business leaders, executives, philanthropists, influential members of the community. Nathan felt a strange sensation. Instinct. The same instinct that had guided him throughout this entire ordeal. He opened the calendar entry. Several notes appeared. Nothing explicit, but one sentence stood out. Ideal timing after announcement. Nathan sat back slowly. Announcement. Not if. When? The gala wasn't merely another event. It was the stage. The audience Evelyn had been cultivating for months would be there. Friends, family, professional contacts. Everyone. The realization arrived instantly. She intended to reveal the separation publicly. Position herself as the brave woman finally walking away from an emotionally neglectful marriage. The entire narrative would reach its climax that night. Nathan closed the laptop. His pulse remained calm, steady, because for the first time since discovering the affair, he knew exactly when the battle would end. The gala. 6 weeks. The countdown had begun. Over the following month, Evelyn became increasingly confident. Nathan noticed it in everything. The way she smiled. The way she spoke. The way she looked at him. She no longer seemed worried about being caught. Because in her mind, she had already won. The affair remained hidden. The narrative was established. The escape plan was ready. Lucas appeared equally confident. New photographs surfaced. New messages. More discussions about their future together. Vacation plans. Housing discussions. Conversations about life after Nathan. The certainty in their words was almost astonishing. Neither of them imagined the truth had survived. Neither of them realized their entire strategy existed inside Nathan's evidence archive. One evening, only 2 weeks before the gala, Evelyn brought up divorce for the first time directly. The conversation happened over dinner. Quietly. Almost casually. I've been thinking a lot lately. Nathan looked up. About what? She took a slow breath. Us. There it was. The moment she had been preparing for. Nathan remained calm. What about us? Evelyn lowered her eyes. The performance was flawless. I don't know if we're happy anymore. Nathan nearly admired the acting. Nearly. The sadness. The hesitation. The carefully controlled vulnerability. Months of rehearsal condensed into a single conversation. And yet every word was a lie. Because Nathan had already read the script. I see, he said quietly. Evelyn looked relieved. As if she expected resistance. As if she expected him to fight. Instead, he simply listened. That response unsettled her. For the first time in months, Nathan saw uncertainty flicker across her face. Only for a second. Then it disappeared. But Nathan noticed. Because he noticed everything now. After she went to bed, he remained downstairs alone. The house was silent. The evidence archive sat open on his laptop. Years of marriage reduced to folders and timestamps. Pain preserved in digital form. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he opened the file that mattered most. Transition strategy. The forgotten document. The fatal mistake. The truth Evelyn believed no longer existed. Nathan closed the file. His decision was made. The gala would not belong to Evelyn. The narrative would not belong to Evelyn. The ending would not belong to Evelyn. For nearly a year, she had controlled the story. In 2 weeks, that control would disappear forever. Because the trap was finally closing. And neither Evelyn nor Lucas had any idea they were already standing inside it. The Seattle Children's Foundation Charity Gala had always been about appearances. Elegant gowns, tailored tuxedos, crystal chandeliers reflecting golden light across polished marble floors, smiles that concealed ambitions, handshakes that concealed rivalries, conversations that concealed secrets. On this particular evening, the ballroom of the historic waterfront hotel seemed more dazzling than ever. Nearly 400 guests filled the venue. Business executives, attorneys, investors, philanthropists, local media personalities, and, most importantly, nearly everyone who mattered within Nathan and Evelyn's social world. The audience Evelyn had spent months preparing. The audience she believed would witness her triumph. As she stood before the mirror in their hotel suite, adjusting a diamond earring, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Control. Everything was finally happening according to plan. The separation conversation had already begun. Friends viewed her sympathetically. Family members believed she had endured years of emotional neglect. Lucas was waiting for the right moment. The future she had imagined was finally within reach. Behind her, Nathan adjusted his cufflinks. Calm, quiet, predictable. Exactly as he had always been. Evelyn glanced at him through the mirror. For a brief moment, a tiny flicker of guilt appeared, then disappeared. The feeling had become easier to ignore over time. People moved on. Marriages ended. Life continued. That was what she told herself. What she refused to acknowledge was that her marriage hadn't simply ended. She had dismantled it. Piece by piece. Lie by lie. And tonight, she intended to make the final move. You ready? She asked. Nathan met her eyes in the reflection. Yes. The answer sounded ordinary. Nothing about his expression suggested what was coming. Nothing. 40 minutes later they entered the ballroom. Music floated through the air. Champagne glasses clinked. Photographers captured smiling guests, arriving beneath the glittering chandeliers. Almost immediately, people approached Evelyn. Friends, colleagues, supporters. The network she had carefully cultivated. Nathan noticed how naturally she moved among them. The sympathetic touches. The meaningful glances. The private conversations. The subtle indications that everyone already knew something was wrong. The narrative had spread further than even he realized. Across the room, Nathan spotted Lucas. The man looked confident, relaxed, wearing a custom-tailored navy tuxedo. He stood near several executives from Evelyn's company. Occasionally, his eyes drifted toward Evelyn, not openly, carefully. But Nathan saw it. And for the first time, Lucas noticed Nathan watching him. Their eyes met briefly. Lucas looked away first. The gesture told Nathan everything. Confidence often vanished when confronted directly. The evening progressed exactly as Evelyn expected. Dinner, speeches, charitable presentations, silent auctions. Everything unfolding according to schedule. Then came the moment she had been waiting for. Near the end of the gala, Several key donors and influential guests gathered in an adjoining reception hall. The atmosphere became more intimate, more personal. Conversations deepened, attention focused. Evelyn understood the significance perfectly. This was where reputations formed, where stories spread, where perceptions became reality. She gently touched the arm of Claire Whitmore. "Can I say something?" Claire smiled warmly. "Of course." Within minutes, a small crowd formed. Friends, co-workers, acquaintances. Curious faces turned toward Evelyn. Nathan stood nearby, silent, watching. Evelyn took a breath. The performance began. "I've spent a long time thinking about this." Her voice trembled slightly. Perfectly measured. Not excessive. Just enough vulnerability. The room grew quiet. People listened. Exactly as she expected. Marriage is complicated. Several guests nodded sympathetically. Evelyn lowered her eyes. "I've tried for years to make things work." Nathan recognized nearly every sentence, because he had already read versions of them inside her planning document. The same themes, the same language, the same carefully constructed victim narrative. "I think sometimes two people simply grow apart." The crowd remained silent, focused, supportive. Evelyn continued. "Nathan and I have decided to separate." A collective murmur spread through the room. Shock, concern, sympathy, everything she anticipated. Then she delivered the line she had rehearsed for months. "I don't blame anyone." A pause. "I just reached a point where I could no longer ignore how alone I felt." Several people looked toward Nathan, some with concern, others with judgment. Exactly as Evelyn intended. For one glorious moment, she believed she had won. Then Nathan stepped forward, calmly, without urgency, without anger, without emotion. The room shifted almost immediately. Something in his demeanor felt different. Certain, steady, dangerous. Evelyn noticed it too. A faint crease appeared between her eyebrows. "Nathan?" she said quietly. He looked at her, then at the crowd, then back at her. "I agree with one thing." The room fell silent. You shouldn't ignore the truth. A strange tension filled the air. People exchanged uncertain glances. Evelyn forced a smile. "What are you doing?" Nathan didn't answer her. Instead, he addressed the room. "For months, many of you have heard a story about our marriage." The silence deepened. "Tonight, I think you deserve the entire story." For the first time all evening, genuine fear appeared in Evelyn's eyes. Not concern. Fear. Real fear. "Nathan." His voice remained calm. "I spent a long time wondering whether I should say anything." Evelyn's heart began pounding. The sensation was sudden, violent, wrong. Something was happening. Something she hadn't anticipated. Then Nathan removed a small flash drive from his pocket, and the world shifted beneath her feet. "No," she whispered. Nathan continued. "For nearly a year, Evelyn has been involved in a relationship with another man." Gasps erupted throughout the room. Shock spread instantly. People turned toward Evelyn, toward Lucas, toward Nathan. The carefully controlled atmosphere shattered. Evelyn felt panic surge through her chest. "Nathan, stop." Her voice sounded thin, weak, unrecognizable. He didn't stop. Because he wasn't finished. And for the first time, Evelyn realized she no longer controlled the narrative. A large presentation screen stood at the front of the reception hall, used earlier for charitable displays. Nathan had arranged access hours before. Now it illuminated. The first image appeared. A photograph. Evelyn and Lucas entering a luxury hotel. Timestamp visible. Date visible. Faces unmistakable. The room exploded with whispers. Evelyn's stomach dropped. No! Another photograph appeared. Then another. Then another. Dinner dates. Weekend trips. Private messages. Months of evidence. Not accusations. Facts. Undeniable facts. Lucas looked physically ill. Several executives stepped away from him immediately, as though betrayal might be contagious. Evelyn struggled to breathe. "This isn't what it looks like." The words escaped automatically. The first defense. The first instinct. Denial. Nathan turned toward her. Directly. Calmly. "Then explain it." Silence. Complete silence. Everyone watched. Everyone waited. Evelyn searched desperately for an answer. For a lie. For an escape. Nothing came. Nathan continued. And then he revealed the document. The fatal mistake. The forgotten file. The one thing Evelyn never knew survived. Transition Strategy. The title appeared on the giant screen. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Then Nathan began reading. Not everything. Only enough. Enough to destroy the illusion. The sections about manipulating public perception. The lists of friends. The planned conversations. The victim narrative. The strategy to portray Nathan as emotionally neglectful. Every word came from Evelyn herself. Every sentence undeniable. Every page devastating. The room grew colder. Not physically. Emotionally. People stopped looking at Nathan. They started looking at Evelyn. And the expressions changed. Sympathy disappeared, replaced by disbelief. Then disappointment. Then disgust. Claire Whitmore covered her mouth. Michael Sanders stared at the floor. Nathan's sister looked physically shaken. One by one, the supporters Evelyn had spent months cultivating began realizing the same horrifying truth. They had been manipulated, used, played. The realization spread across the room like fire. Evelyn felt the walls closing around her. No. Tears filled her eyes. This isn't fair. The irony struck several people immediately. Nathan simply looked at her. For the first time in months, he spoke directly. No hesitation. No uncertainty. No self-doubt. Only truth. You planned this for nearly a year. Evelyn shook her head. I didn't mean. You told people I abandoned you. Nathan. You told them I was emotionally unavailable. Tears streamed down her face. The room remained silent. No one came to her defense. No one interrupted. No one rescued her. Because the evidence had spoken louder than any explanation she could offer. Then came the final blow. Nathan turned toward Lucas. Would you like to explain your role? Lucas froze. Every eye in the room shifted toward him. The pressure was unbearable, and like many people who thrive in secrecy, he collapsed under exposure. I didn't know about the document. The words escaped before he could stop them. A catastrophic mistake. Because in trying to defend himself, he confirmed everything. A collective gasp spread through the crowd. Lucas realized too late what he had done. Evelyn stared at him in horror. The man she believed would stand beside her, the man she sacrificed everything for, had just abandoned her. Publicly. The relationship shattered in real time, and everyone witnessed it. Nathan watched quietly. The battle was over. Not because he had destroyed Evelyn, because she had destroyed herself. He had simply revealed the truth. Across the room, Evelyn stood alone, completely alone. The image she spent years building had collapsed in less than 15 minutes, and there was nothing left to hide behind. The silence that followed public humiliation was far louder than the humiliation itself. For the first 48 hours after the gala, Evelyn barely left her condominium. The same phone that had once buzzed endlessly with invitations, messages, and social engagements now remained almost silent. The calls stopped. The texts slowed. The sympathy she had spent months cultivating vanished overnight. Because sympathy depends on belief, and belief had been shattered. The story she had carefully constructed no longer belonged to her. The truth did, and the truth traveled faster than any lie. By Monday morning, the scandal had spread through nearly every corner of their professional and social circles. Private conversations became public discussions. Whispers became facts. Facts became consequences. At work, Evelyn walked into an environment that felt completely unfamiliar. Not because the office had changed, because people had. Co-workers who once greeted her warmly suddenly became distant. Conversations ended when she entered rooms. Elevator rides became painfully quiet. Several executives avoided direct eye contact entirely. The humiliation wasn't loud. It was subtle, and therefore worse. Every smile felt forced. Every interaction felt artificial. Every glance reminded her that people now knew exactly who she was. 3 days later, she was called into a meeting with senior leadership. The discussion lasted less than 30 minutes. Officially, no one mentioned the affair. No one referenced the gala. No one discussed Lucas. Instead, concerns were raised about professional judgment, trust, reputation, leadership credibility, corporate language for an obvious reality. When the meeting ended, Evelyn understood. Her future at the company was over. The resignation announcement appeared the following week. Publicly, it was described as a mutual decision. Privately, everyone knew the truth. The career she spent more than a decade building collapsed in less than a month. Yet, even that wasn't the worst part. The worst part arrived through Lucas. At first he promised support, calls, Messages. Reassurance. The same promises he had made throughout the affair. We'll get through this. I'm here. We still have each other. Words. Only words. And words become fragile when consequences appear. As pressure mounted, Lucas changed. Slowly at first. Then rapidly. His responses became shorter. His calls became less frequent. His enthusiasm disappeared. The future they had imagined together suddenly became inconvenient. One evening, Evelyn arrived at his apartment without warning. Desperation had replaced pride weeks ago. She needed certainty. Needed reassurance. Needed someone to tell her she hadn't destroyed her life for nothing. Lucas opened the door. The moment she saw his face, she knew. Something had ended. We need to talk, he said. The sentence felt like a death sentence. Evelyn entered slowly. Her chest tightened. Lucas wouldn't look directly at her. That alone told her everything. Finally, he spoke. My board is asking questions. She stared at him. What? The company. Lucas rubbed his forehead. Investors are concerned. The word sounded absurd. Heartless. Transactional. Evelyn laughed bitterly. You can't be serious. I'm trying to protect what I've built. The irony hit her immediately. Protect what I've built. The exact justification she had used for months. The exact logic she had followed while betraying Nathan. Now she stood on the receiving end of it. And it hurt far more than she imagined. Lucas exhaled heavily. I think we need some space. Space. Such a harmless word. Such a cruel word. Evelyn felt tears forming. You're leaving. Lucas said nothing. Silence was answer enough. The realization struck with brutal force. The man she sacrificed her marriage for. The man she defended. The man she imagined building a future beside. Was abandoning her. Not because he loved someone else. Because staying had become inconvenient. Exactly the way she had treated Nathan. For several moments neither spoke. Then Evelyn nodded slowly. A broken nod. A defeated nod. And she walked out. Lucas didn't stop her. Didn't chase her. Didn't call her back. The door closed. And with it, the final illusion died. For the first time in nearly a year, Evelyn was completely alone. The weeks that followed became a blur. Lawyers. Paperwork. Empty rooms. Long nights. Regret. The divorce process moved forward steadily. Nathan remained professional throughout every step. No shouting. No revenge. No cruelty. Only facts. Only boundaries. Only finality. Strangely, that hurt Evelyn more than anger would have. Anger suggested emotion. Nathan's calmness suggested acceptance. He wasn't fighting for the marriage anymore. He wasn't fighting for her. He was simply moving forward. Without her. One rainy afternoon nearly 6 months after the gala, Evelyn found herself parked outside a small waterfront cafe. Pure coincidence. Or perhaps not. Deep down, she knew she had driven there hoping to see him. And she did. Through the window, she spotted Nathan sitting at a corner table. He looked different. Not dramatically. Subtly. Healthier. Lighter. The exhaustion that had lived behind his eyes for months was gone. For a moment she simply watched. Then she noticed the woman sitting across from him. Dark hair. Warm smile. Intelligent eyes. Nothing extravagant. Nothing performative. Just genuine happiness. Nathan laughed at something she said. A real laugh. The kind Evelyn hadn't heard from him in years. The sight felt like a knife. Because she finally understood something. Nathan hadn't become happier because he found someone else. He became happier because he escaped someone who had been slowly destroying him. And that someone was her. The realization settled over her like cold rain. Painful. Unavoidable. True. For the first time, she stopped blaming circumstances. Stopped blaming loneliness. Stopped blaming marriage problems. Stopped blaming Nathan. The responsibility belonged to her. Entirely. She had planned every step, chosen every lie, protected every secret, created every consequence. No one forced her. No one manipulated her. No one trapped her. She had done it herself. And now she had to live with it. Months later, the Charity Foundation hosted another gala. Nathan attended. Not as a scandal. Not as a victim. As a respected guest. People greeted him warmly. Friends trusted him again. Professional opportunities expanded. His reputation emerged stronger than before. Because truth tends to survive exposure. Across the ballroom, someone briefly mentioned Evelyn's name. The conversation lasted less than 30 seconds before moving on. That was the final consequence. Not hatred. Not revenge. Irrelevance. The world had continued without her. The narrative she once fought so hard to control no longer mattered. She no longer mattered to the story. Nathan did. Because he had survived. Because he had refused to become what betrayal tried to turn him into. Because he chose dignity over destruction. Later that evening, standing beside the waterfront beneath a sky full of stars, Nathan looked across Elliott Bay. The city lights shimmered against the dark water. A year earlier, he had stood in nearly the same place believing his life was ending. Now he understood the truth. It hadn't ended. It had begun again. Sometimes, losing the person you trusted most feels like losing everything. But sometimes it reveals something even more valuable. Yourself. Behind him, music drifted from the gala ballroom. Ahead of him stretched an open future. No lies. No manipulation. No performance. Just possibility. Nathan smiled quietly and turned toward the light, without looking back. Because the woman who planned the perfect betrayal had made one fatal mistake. She underestimated the value of truth. And in the end, truth took everything from her, while giving Nathan everything he thought he had lost.